So now that that's out of the way, I'm going to introduce Kristin van Ogtrop. She's the author of Just Let Me Lie Down. She's the former longtime editor-in-chief of Real Simple. And if you're my age, you know, we've all seen that magazine and love it. She is the former editor-in-chief, I had mentioned that, and the amateur columnist for Time. She's currently a literary agent at Inkwell Management. And Kristin, I'd love to hear how that happened, but I'm sure you'll tell us. She's going to be in conversation with Zibby Owens, who just released one of her own books, and I was lucky enough to be there. Her first book, called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. It's Moms Don't Have Time to, a quarantine anthology, which we don't have time to do anything. During lockdown, she hosted 2 Instagram live talk shows, and I like that she's deemed now New York City's most important bookfluencer. I love that term, the bookfluencer. So without further ado, Zibby and Kristin will chat away, and then please ask questions and we'll get to as many as we can. There are also book plates if you order your book tonight that will get to you, but they're limited quantity, so buy your book tonight. Okay, go ahead, ladies.
Thanks, Patty. Thank you very much. It's great to be here, and it's really nice to see you, Zibby.
You too. Patty, do you want me to put the spotlight or something, or no? Do you want to spotlight us so we're like bigger so people can find? Oh, not just me though.
Abby,
just like that.
Is Abby? Can you spotlight? I have no idea how to do that.
Yeah, you did it. You did it. Thank you. Thank you. Sometimes it's hard to find people in the whole thing. So anyway, hi, Kristin. How are you?
Hello. You're much bigger now.
Yes. Too big.
No, never.
Well, it's true. I feel like I'm like a date who's come on too strong, because I've loved this book for so long that I'm like, you know, anyway, I just happen to have really loved it. And I don't know if it's my age or the time of life or your sense of humor or your great writing or the breadth of stories and all the scenes you depict. But for me, this was like such a perfect read, a combination of the heartfelt and emotional and parenting and aging and yet humor. I don't know. For me, it like checked all the boxes. So anyway, just had to say that.
And you read it when you were sick with COVID-19 too, which is, I don't know what that says about my book. I'm going to take it as a good thing.
Yes, take it as a good thing. It kept my interest and made me laugh at a bleak moment. So yes. So why don't you tell people who are here who might not have read this book yet, what inspired you to write it and basically what it's about?
Okay, so I mean, inspiration, I think that's sort of a 2-track answer. One, what inspires me to write about my experience as a woman in the world in 2021 was the many years I spent at Real Simple running this magazine, where every month I would write an editor's letter. And I got so much feedback from women who I will never ever meet, who said, I feel like you're my friend. I feel like you're in my head. Oh my gosh, I have that same kind of vacuum cleaner too, and I hate it too. Yeah, I mean, some very basic things like I feel the same way about my children, and some really funny specific things like I hate my vacuum cleaner. And it just made you realize that there is this really big community. I mean, this is a really stupid observation, but a huge community of women in this country who are experiencing the same things at the same time. And it makes them feel entertained or more secure or more hopeful if they can read the experiences of someone that reflect their own. So that was one thing that was kind of a through line for my professional life, and I carried it over into my book writing life. But also just in terms of the topic specifically and midlife, you know, I think that midlife it's like the punchline of a joke, you know, middle age. And yet I think it's a time of life that is full, if you look at things a certain way, with such hope and optimism. You know, you're old enough to feel self-actualized and kind of not care so much what people think anymore, which is incredibly liberating. But you're also old enough to have seen some terrible things, and it makes you more grateful to get up every day. And so I think that middle age wrongly gets a bad rap. And I think there should be more books about middle age. And also, you know, I mean, a lot of people my age, I'm older than you are, but are, you know, love books and kind of experience the world through books. So anyway, that's sort of how it all came together.
I didn't realize I was in middle age until everybody else around me started like referring to my being in middle age. And I was sort of like, okay, so it's clearly sometime between 42 and 44, right? Do you have an age in mind? Because like 41, no, you're still good, but
yeah.
I don't know.
It's funny. I was having lunch with a friend yesterday and having this exact same conversation, and she's older than I am. And she and I were talking about who the readership for this book is and what is middle age. And we decided middle age is like 40 to 65. And she said, I realized I'm not actually middle-aged, like you're not going to live to 130. It's just probably, it's unlikely you will live to 130, but I think that it's a really long period. It's much longer than adolescence, for instance, but it's formative and important in the same, and full of growth in the same way.
I wonder if there will be a category of sort of indignities of old age. I mean, nobody wants to say they're old age. I mean, that's like, forget it. I mean, who wants that label? I don't know. I think we need better labels.
Yeah.
But you write about this period of time in such a funny way. Let me read just this one passage from the beginning to now. Yeats knew that things fall apart. Yeats or Yates? I never know. Yates knew that things fall apart. It's Keats and Yates, right? Okay.
Yates, I know. It's
right.
This year. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Yates knew that things fall apart and the center cannot hold. My center cannot hold either, which is why I've got back fat and a muffin top above the waistband of my pants. But I try to laugh because back fat and a muffin top and chipped paint and imaginary dinner guests are insignificant frustrations. Minor indignities in the grand scheme. Middle age is full of them, and there are so many things that are much, much worse. None of us knows how life will turn out. And even if we forget everything else, who is Yates again? We must not forget that. So let's just feel happy to be here, to cry sometimes when the occasion calls for it, but to laugh as often as we can. That is enough, because consider the alternative. I love that.
Oh, thanks. I mean, I do think that captures the spirit of the book. There's a lot of indignity, and the book has from medical issues to attempting to raise children, and maintain friendships and careers that fall apart. There's a lot of indignity that I write about in the book, but there's always kind of like a rainbow at the end. I don't think that I have a Pollyanna view about anything, including middle age, but I like to try to look on the bright side. And I hope, particularly, it's interesting to be publishing a book, as you have too, Zibby, this year in a pandemic, when you are surrounded by real suffering. I can complain about the stupid crap in my life, but I don't have real suffering. And I think if you could publish a book in this climate that gives people a sense of optimism, they see that. They feel that in a way that I think maybe in other years, publishing a book like this, that wouldn't be the first thing that people saw.
Interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, you even take like moments with your kids, like what you referred to in this passage, when your kids, you have a part of your apartment that your kids would circle around on skateboards or whatever and always nick. And at the time you were like so irritated by it. And now, and you can just so see like the scene as you write about it, like you're in the apartment and the kids are grown and you have the nicks on the wall and you're like, oh, what I wouldn't give for that. And it's just this like constant juxtaposition of parenting that it's sort of difficult to manage while you're in it. And then you immediately feel sad when it's over. So,
right.
So anyway,
yeah.
That's the paint comment, but.
Yeah, you and I have talked about it. It's that tension with your kids where you can't wait for them to grow up and you can't, you're always waiting, wanting the next phase to come. And then when they do grow up, you think, oh, wait, actually, this isn't what I wanted. I thought I wanted this all along and it really wasn't what I wanted.
You also have some essays in here go in depth into different events, right? Like the lead essay here is about this medical issue you had, which I feel bad even saying was hilarious, but it was hilarious to read about. And I want to go back to that, but this, you also intersperse it with just these little reflections, almost like Seinfeld isms when you're just like chatting about life. So you, in chapter 2, which is Don't Make Me Rate You, I just want to read this one passage. Last week, I had to attend an event that required me to look better than my regular wilted self. I left effortless beauty behind somewhere in my 20s. So I did what many self-respecting women would do. I went for a blowout at a nearby dry bar. Dry bar is the kind of totally genius, why didn't I think of that business that is making someone who is not me very rich. Afterward, my hair looked much better. So much better, in fact, that I was feeling almost effortlessly beautiful until I got back to my desk to find an email from Dry Bar asking if I would rate my experience, which means there's yet another business I have to break up with because it wants more of me than I'm willing to give. I mean, you could have easily gotten that email and been like, whatever. And instead, you have a funny essay that we all get to like laugh about and then think about all the emails we get.
Well, you know, I think, and maybe this might speak to how you put your collections together, Zibby, in the books that you have started to publish. Like you start to notice patterns, and then it becomes a story. You know, in a way, it's not a story sometimes unless there's a pattern. And if I hadn't encountered that dry bar situation with like 12 other businesses where I was supposed to rate them, and I would get an email from them after I had already given them my money, I wouldn't have written about it. But that was kind of the one where I thought, okay, this is a thing that can become a story.
I like writing essays that like have a moment where I'm like, I feel bad in this moment, but I bet other people feel similarly bad. So maybe if I write about it, I won't feel as bad, or maybe other people won't feel as bad. Like
Yeah.
I had this moment the other day. I'm older than my husband by 6 years, which now 100 people I don't know have told me is not a big deal. But I wrote about like how I'm aging and he is not really aging so much yet, right? And it wasn't like a big deal. It was like a moment. I didn't really think twice about it, but I thought, you know what, I'll just like write about this moment. And now people have very strong opinions about it, you know, but it becomes like a story because I don't know, if I didn't write it down, would I even remember that moment in the kitchen over the island thinking about it? But at least you can write it. I don't know. And then other people are like, wow, I was feeling the same way.
Yeah. Well, sometimes writing it is therapeutic for you, and sometimes it's therapeutic for other people, and it's magical when it's both.
I like that. Nice equation. You also were so funny, and I know I'm like kind of jumping around because I love all these
Oh, I don't
passages.
care.
You have a son named Owen, as I do, and you said for 6 months when he was a junior in college, my son Owen convinced himself that he wanted to start his career as a management consultant. This is like 3 paragraphs. Is that too long? What do you think?
No,
It's so funny.
not for me.
He was a double major in the honors program at a prestigious state university, and effortlessly, it seemed to me, got a 4.0 just about every semester. He's always been an extremely reasonable kid, and he reasoned that management consulting would allow him to see the inside of all sorts of industries and companies and enable him to figure out what he really wanted to do with his life, which may have been right, but whatever. I thought of all the smarty pants management consultants I had worked with over the years and pulled out every warning I could think of. You will never sleep. You will live out of hotel rooms. You will work your ass off. You will probably be really, really bored. None of these warnings seemed to work. Then I thought of the moment in Pride and Prejudice, one of Owen's favorite books, after Mr. Collins proposes to Lizzie, and her father tells her, from this day you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do. And so I said to Owen, oh, honey, it's totally fine if you want to be a management consultant. Just know that I won't ever speak to you again. Maybe I can't take credit, but after Owen graduated from college with honors, he became a 4th grade teacher.
I'm not taking credit for that. And I apologies if there's anyone in this meeting who either is a management consultant or has been a management consultant or really likes people who are management consultants. As I do, I actually have friends who are management consultants, but if you read my book, you will see that I have had some unpleasant experiences when I was a corporate citizen with management consultants, which is what made me have such a strong opinion about Owen's future. I'm not saying I was right, but I didn't keep my mouth shut.
You painted such an great picture of what it was like, speaking of management consultants in the corporate world, of being in a rapidly changing industry and being at the helm of a company with a lot of external inputs that you had to deal with, and of course a whole team to manage, and what you did, you know, steering a magazine through those changing tides, and then how you ended up leaving, and the sorrow and the emotion. So tell me a little about how just not emotional is the wrong word, but just you were so like your job was your life and your heart and soul. And when it becomes your life and your heart and soul, and then things change so drastically, how do you manage that? It's like a loss, right? Because
Yeah.
it's so much more than just it's not an income. It's like a identity. So tell me a little more about that transition for you.
Oh gosh. Well, I did have,
I mean, you don't have to.
oh, no. It's fine. I mean, look, I wrote a whole chapter about it. It was my magazine career was a really wonderful career. And as sort of a little side note, that chapter of the book, which is called the Shalom Ambulette, or How to Know When Your Career is Over, a website that a lot of magazine people frequent excerpted that chapter. And it's like I hit some nerve. Well, that sounds negative. I struck a chord with a lot of people who had been in the magazine industry, some who still are. And I got a text from a friend of mine who was the editor-in-chief for a long time of InStyle magazine. And he said, the number of people who have sent me that article is now in the double digits, because there was something, but it's true of any industry that is changing or dying, or consumer needs change, and so the money dries up. It's just a terrible feeling. And so when you do a job that you love, as I did, and I did love that job for a long time, and then you leave it either because you have no choice or because it becomes so different that you don't love it anymore, which was the case for me, it's really sad. You mourn what the thing that you used to have, just like in a relationship or in a friendship or any kind of loss. And so I think that afterwards I felt rootless. I would say I felt rootless. I was happy and I was less stressed. And at the beginning I was overjoyed because I felt free. But then, probably a year, I was fortunate in that I took 2 years off in between leaving magazines and beginning to work at Inkwell Management, this literary agency I work for now. And it was really great. And I felt that freedom for, I would say, the better part of a year. And then I started to think, okay, I just felt like my identity was starting to kind of lose definition, like the edges of my being were getting really porous and blurry. And that's when I thought, okay, I need to find the next thing. And there are people who are really good at knowing who they are without having a job. But I don't know if I don't know that I am one of those people. Not yet, at least.
And how do you find being an agent? I mean, it's such a shift. What's it
Yeah.
like? Is it awesome? Do you love it? Or are you,
I do. Well, it depends on the day. Some days I really love it. It's hard. It's the thing that I didn't realize about being an agent that is very different from being a magazine editor is there's so much rejection. And so you don't have to have the thick skin so much as you have to really be able to heal quickly when you've got a project that you think would be a great book, and many people don't see it that way. And you feel responsible for your client if you're not, when you don't meet success. But then on the days when you go out with something, I work almost exclusively in nonfiction, so I'm sending out proposals. And when you get, 8 editors who say, I love this and I want to meet this author, that's like a high. It's an amazing feeling. So I like it a lot. I really like the book publishing industry. It's nice to work for an industry that feels really healthy and robust and is filled with smart people who love books. Like, what's better than that? I mean, you talk to them all the time and you meet them all the time. It's a really great community.
Yeah. Someone was just asking me, well, isn't it hard? Because aren't authors really introspective and whatever. I was like, no, what? Not at
Yeah.
all. You know,
I mean, some,
right.
right?
Some people. I mean, I
Just
think
like people.
yeah.
Yeah.
No,
And
in
some are
general.
crazy, and
Yep.
some are amazing, and some are crazy and amazing.
Yeah, it's
I
like
mean,
a cross section of everyone you've met in your whole life.
yeah.
What are some projects you're excited about that you're representing? Can you talk about those, or that you've sold, or that are coming out? Or
Oh, well, I'll talk about the last two things I sold.
okay,
I've got things in the works that I don't feel like I can, either I'm close to a sale or I haven't even sent it out yet. So I don't feel comfortable talking about those. But the last two books I sold, one was a book that is a book of photographs of New York, actually, Zibby, and taken from the sidewalk, really beautiful photographs by a talented photographer who used to be a magazine editor, as I am. Her name's Susan Kaufman. And it's a sidewalk view of kind of the most charming streetscapes and buildings in New York. That's one. And then the book I sold right before that is also a photography book, actually, although I've sold 3 books that have photography in them out of 12 books in 2 years. So it's just sort of a weird coincidence. It's the last 2, but there's this dog on Instagram named Booby Billy, who is, well, I can't really reveal much about her identity, but her name is Booby Billy. There are humans involved in Booby Billy, but they remain anonymous. And she is this little 6-pound Greyhound Chihuahua mix, and she's very fashionable. And so it's basically Booby Billy's photographic memoir, and that will be coming out at the beginning probably of 2023 or end of 2022. It's a long, as you know, that's a big difference from magazine editing. It's a very long process.
well, even magazines take a while. I mean, the print versions, that can feel like a long time as well.
Yeah, but when I talk to clients, if I talk to new clients and they ask me sort of, so how does this work? And I say, well, you write a proposal, we sell your book based on proposal. You get a year to write. I mean, this is just a very rough sketch, and there are obviously differences around the margins, but you get a year to write it, and then it comes out a year after that. They're like, what? So in 2 years, my book is coming out? I mean, it can be long, really long.
Yeah. I feel like people are also asking the question now, should my book that comes out in 2 years address the pandemic, or should it not? Should we pretend it did happen or not happen? Or, how do you have a view on that?
Well, I think that the pandemic has fundamentally changed and permanently changed the way so many things, including how we're all going to work in an office or not, that you can't pretend it didn't exist. Like, for instance, I'm working on a proposal right now that that talks about some issues that really came to the fore in the pandemic, societal issues that were always there, but then were really heightened in the pandemic. And the way my author is working that in is like, the pandemic is there and she mentions it, but it's not the focus of the book. The focus of the book is problems that have existed for a long time and hopefully will eventually not exist anymore. But the pandemic was kind of the catalyst that made a lot of people see these problems. That's a long answer, but.
At the beginning of this conversation, you were talking about middle age and saying that you're old enough to have had some really bad stuff happen. What really bad stuff has happened to you?
Well, I mean, the 2 bad things, and bad is a pretty broad word, right? But in the book, I write about the death of one of our pets when he was a puppy. And we were in the Adirondacks and it was a frozen lake and we didn't know, and I won't give it away, I guess, but we didn't really know what happened to him for a long time, for about 6 months. And it was the first time, I'm 57. I lived in New York. I was in New York on 9/11. I know people who died on 9/11, as probably many people here tonight do. And And so there are things that I have experienced or that have been close to me, I guess, that were really tragic. And when the dog died, my son Owen, who you mentioned earlier, and I'll write about this in that chapter, I kept referring to it as a small tragedy. I mean, we have 2 dogs, we love our dogs. You know, my family would say we're bananas about our dogs. Non-dog lovers would say I'm obsessed with my dogs. But to me, the death of a dog is it can be a tragedy, but it's kind of a small tragedy, as tragedies go. And my son got so mad at me, and he said, please stop calling this a small tragedy. Because to him, it wasn't a small tragedy. You know, my kids have been lucky enough to not really know like really terrible loss. And so it was the first time that they had experienced something like that. And so then I stopped using that word. But then there's another essay in the book about, it's called When a Friend Dies Before the Age of 60. And I don't name him, but it's about a friend of mine who died after a, several years long battle with cancer. And basically how there's sort of no rule book to be the person who survives the person who died, and that is still he died 2 years ago. And when I was recording the audiobook, I had to keep stopping because I kept crying when I was, and this happened not a long time ago, but it's not a fresh wound. And so then I had to make myself think of something that made me really mad while I was reading. So I wouldn't keep having to stop reading that chapter. It's not a very long chapter, but stuff like that, you see friends get divorced and people die and people lose their parents. I mean, I'm lucky. I saw my parents are here.
Oh,
I should say to my father, if I may, Zibby, that
you may.
Dad, you're like Zibby's favorite part of the whole book, by the way. So
I am. Yeah, he was. He absolutely was. And now I have to start scrolling to see if I can find him. The scenes you wrote about him and how funny he was. How he was saying, so, the essay for which this book is named is about how you had this like perforation in your stomach, not to give things away, but it ended up having to do with a plastic fork in some way. And your dad in the hospital was like, yep, that's my daughter. One who swallowed a fork, and saying like, hey, would it be in bad taste to put a fork on your pillow? And you're like, not funny, Dad, not funny. And
no, he said, would you think I found a fork in my glove compartment. Would it be funny if I put it on your pillow? And I was like, no, that would not. At this moment, now, if someone put a plastic fork, Dad, wherever you are in this meeting, it would be funny now if you put a plastic fork on. But when I was in the hospital, it would not have been funny to have a plastic fork on my plate.
Like, his befriending in the elevator, the orderly or whatever in the hospital, and like, I mean, just the whole thing. I think because people have those types of people in their lives, and I feel like men like your dad, they're not as prevalent today. It's like, I have a stepdad who's sort of like man of the people, like hey, Howard Katz, how are you? Anywhere you go, he's gonna meet the guy. And I feel like men are not like that anymore. Like, I don't know. So I love it. It's so heartwarming, and you wrote about him with so much love and humor. So yeah, I did love it.
Well, it's. I mean, I think that one of the nice things, although my children would not agree with this, and I think that my children do believe that on certain levels, I become more and more like my father with each passing year. I talked to my son. There are a lot of different things that check off the boxes, but I think one of the nice things about reaching this stage of life is you are more comfortable being uninhibited, maybe, and not caring so much what other people think. And as I said, sort of at the beginning, and that's really, I mean, that can be that sometimes I will sit in my now still relatively new workplace. This happened in a meeting yesterday, and I said something just really dumb, like something that just made me sound like I was super old fashioned and kind of really not, I don't know. I made kind of a stupid observation. And I thought about it today, and I just thought, oh, well, you know, like I mean, hopefully people there know me well enough to know that I'm relatively harmless, but the 20-year-old me would have really been upset reflecting on, oh, I can't believe I said that in that meeting. And now I think, well, you know, we all say dumb things sometimes, and I'm not going to lose sleep over that, because I just sounded like an idiot, but I'm comfortable sometimes sounding like an idiot.
And honestly, probably nobody is remembering it except for you. Like, nobody is thinking about it. I bet it just flew in and out of everybody else's mind aside from yours. Maybe. I mean, unless it was really stupid. I mean, it could have been really, really stupid, in which case I don't even know what to say. Sorry.
That's all right. But we've all been there.
We've all been there. You also talk about how much your friendships matter and how to weed through them and all of that. And you talked about it in relationship to dogs. And you said, unless you are a lunatic / perfect pet owner, feeding a dog takes 3 minutes twice a day. Feeding a friendship, oh, I get tired just thinking about it. And yet friendship makes us human. It's what sustains us. So tell me about that. And like, especially with like the times we're in now and not being able to see people for so long, how have you managed to sustain your friendships?
Well, that's an excellent question. I don't know that I feel like I've been good at it. I had lunch with a friend yesterday, the same friend who we established that middle age has a very broad range. And she said, you know, I used to wonder why you and I weren't better friends. And then I read the chapter on friendship in your book, and I felt a lot better because I realized you don't really have that many friends. Right, and I was like, well, I guess that's good. I guess it's good that it made you feel better. I mean, I think that when your life becomes very busy, I mean, I feel like I should be asking you this question, Zibby. You have more children than I do, and you have a busier life than I do. You know, it unfortunately, if you're a certain type of person, and I'm definitely in this camp, when you have a full family life and a career, and you need some time to yourself sometimes, friendships kind of go to the bottom of the pile, you know? And so what I wrote about in that chapter, it's actually, that chapter is really kind of a long love letter to my book group, because even though the women in my book group aren't women who I see every day, they are a constant. You know, they're women. It's the same group of 8 women who I have been friends with, as I write in the book, since our children were in diapers, you know, and now our children, well, except for this third child I had kind of in middle age, for most of them, our children are all out of college. And so much has happened in the course of those 20 years, that even if they're not friendships that I actively cultivate all the time, they mean something in my life. So, I mean, just to answer your question more directly, I take walks with friends. I see friends when we have to like do carpool-y stuff with the kids. I'm constantly texting with someone about a carpool. But it's sort of like a lot of my friendships in that way are sort of transactional, I guess. Like you can make the transaction funny and warm, but it's still kind of a transaction. I don't know. How would you answer that question? How have you maintained friendships with a super busy life and in the pandemic?
I've been really bad about it. I've been really bad about it. My husband is like really good. He'll like be like, hey, and he'll remind me. He'll be like, hey, have you called like your friend Jen lately? You should call her. Like, how's your friend Annie? How's she doing? I'll be like, you're right. I need to call them. But it slips. And also, I feel like the friendships I have that are so important to me, when I do call or when they call me, because they're all equally busy, right? It's not one-sided. My friends all have kids and they all have, everybody's so busy. It's not just me. We pick right up, right? The friendships that last are the ones where like you call and you don't even need to say hello. You're just like, what do you think about this skirt or whatever, whatever, you just like jump right in.
Yeah.
But I must say I did write an email, and a couple weeks ago, I had sort of a thing with this one friend because I post so much on Instagram. So it's hard for me to say like, I don't have time when obviously I have time to like document all this stuff about my life. But for me, I view that in a different way. And so this one friend and I got into this thing because she's like, you don't tell me about the stuff, but I read about it on Instagram. Like, am I supposed to comment? Like, why don't you tell me? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, cause I don't know. So that's been like a whole.
Well, okay. I have an answer for that.
Okay. Tell me
my answer.
Yeah, I do. I want
First
your
of all,
answer.
I think you posting on Instagram is part of your work.
That's what I said.
Yeah, it's not. And also posting on Instagram takes what? 90 seconds, maybe. I mean, you take the picture, you write a caption, you're done. If you catching up with a friend, you can't just, depending on how often you see this friend, if it's been a long time, you can't do a 90-second catch up with her. You'd have to write her a long email detailing a lot of things that are happening in your life. And so I guess the trade-off would be you'd have to just stop doing Instagram for like 4 days to write her. You know what I mean? Like, but it's also, given the nature of your work, that I look at your Instagram as your work.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I think that's good advice. In the 4 days leading up to a coffee date that I may or may not have with this particular friend, I will stop posting anything about my innermost feelings.
Well, and also, but if she doesn't understand your life,
well, that was the other
is
thing.
that a good friend?
Right. I mean, that was the other element. Yeah, but it's hard. But that situation did inspire me, and this may have been a waste of time. I sent an email to like my 20 closest friends, because at this point in our lives, I don't know about you, like I have good friends from different parts of my life, right? Like my 2 best friends from high school, and my friend from business school, and my friend from this job, and my friend, and they're all really good friends still, but I don't see them and I don't talk to them as much. Anyway, I sent this like apology email, and I was like, I know we're all so busy, but I love you guys, and I'm sorry. And if I ever offend you that I'm posting on Instagram and not telling you, like, it's nothing personal. And I'm always here, and don't feel like I'm too busy ever to call me, because I'll always drop anything for all of you. So I don't know.
I think you just have to do you. And they're either on Team Zibby or they're not.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Team Kristin. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. Maybe that sounds too selfish or heartless or something, but I was doing an event for the book, and a woman asked me, we were talking about adult friendships, and she said, is it possible to make friendships in middle age? And how do you know if it's a toxic friendship? And I thought that was such an interesting question, because A, don't you just kind of know it's a toxic friendship? And B, if it's toxic, why is that even a friendship, right? So why do you need that person in your life? But I think it's definitely possible to make friends at this age. It's just a different sort of friendship. The friends you have from your childhood, maybe you aren't in touch with them at all, but you, as you said, you pick right back up, but they might not know that your child broke his leg at soccer practice yesterday. The people that you're in touch with all the time, but it's a deeper, different kind of relationship.
Yeah. I feel like conversations like these, though, they also they meet my need for connection in a way. Like, everybody should do this. Like, I was literally thinking, like, I should schedule 30-minute Zooms with my actual real friends, not like new people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm making new friends, sort of. And I don't like, so anyway, I think the power of just 30 minutes of intense listening and discussion can really sustain you for perhaps life.
Yeah.
A life of friendship.
Well, there's something that I write about in the friendship chapter of the book, where I read an article, probably in the New York Times, about some study about basically casual interactions that you have throughout your life, and how they can fulfill a powerful human need. So you don't necessarily need the really long catch up with that friend you were just talking about. If you talk to your mail carrier and your dry cleaner and the woman at CVS, and having interesting, even if short, interactions with those people does something for us. And so in that chapter, which I know you read, that's how I sort of justify not having that many friends. Like, I've got my dry cleaner and I've got the lady at the wine store. So like, isn't that enough?
That is enough. You and your dry cleaner, that's it.
I mean, obviously I'm joking, but you can't, I think if you're a human in the world and you have human interaction, that does, as you were saying about just the 30-minute Zoom call that you're having with me instead of someone who you've known all your life, it still does something for you.
Totally. And it's interesting. And then you're learning about new people, and I don't know, there's something to that too. Yeah. I think
All right,
always.
I'm gonna interrupt just for a second because there's some questions. We're running short on time.
I'm
although-
sorry, I went too
No,
long.
don't apologize. And I love talking friendships, and I mean, this could go on forever. It feels like it's very therapeutic, and I hope everybody feels that way. But I think this was an interesting question, and I guess this is both for Kristin and Zibby. Is it hard because, especially in your book, Kristin, is there a line that you draw between your personal life and what you'll share with others as far in your writing? Because you'd reveal a lot, both of you, I think, about your own lives, and where do you draw the line, and how do you figure out how to do that? Because it's all about boundaries, right? So I'm wondering how you both manage that, or this is wondering that.
Zibby, you want to take that one?
No, you go.
No, it's for both of you, actually.
So for me, my kids are not, I don't think my kids know that I wrote a book, actually. They will know one day when they see it lying around. No, obviously I'm joking, but that when I was at Real Simple, I would write about the family a lot. I wouldn't name my children, but they didn't, they never cared. In fact, my youngest son, his name is Axel. I wrote a piece for the Washington Post that like last week or the week before. And I quote Axel, I don't name him, but he has an answer to a question that I end the piece with, his answer. And a lot of people in the comments on the Washington Post piece, not a lot, but a handful, like a big handful, mentioned Axel and said, oh, your son's a genius, or your son is this. And I just mentioned this to him casually over dinner. And then he was like, oh, I have to read all the comments. And I said, okay, you can't read the comments until you actually read. Then you've got to read Mom's article, which PS is 800 words long. It didn't take him very long. I said, you have to read it. The barrier to entry here is you got to read the article if you're going to read the comments about you. So they're used to it. I mean, there are things that my husband is basically the sensitivity reader in the family. And he has he's much more protective of our kids. And, I mean, we don't have a lot of secrets, but just things that maybe one day make the kids embarrassed or whatever. There's a reason my husband's name isn't in the book. He didn't want me to put his name in the book, even though I named the kids. And so I really trusted him to read it and say, yes, oh, this is fine. And then, maybe rephrase this a little bit. So I don't know though, Patty, if what I do is right. I'm sure there are people out there who say you should not write about your family in a book. And I don't know that they're wrong. So how's that? Maybe I just did a huge, terrible thing. I don't know. Zibby, what's your approach? I mean, your kids are, you write about your kids and your kids are on your social media and stuff. Like how do you feel about it?
My kids are not on my social media.
Oh, they're not?
No. And I try not to write about them too much. I do have an ex-husband who has a point of view on this as well. So I have a fine line to walk. Our deal is we post about them from like behind, where you wouldn't be able to like recognize them on the street.
Yeah.
And I don't ever say their names. I actually think I did this interview, but normally I don't talk about their names. I didn't even put their name in my dedication. I just put like the first letter of their names. I feel like my kids I have so much stuff I don't write. Like I know I share a lot and I know you share a lot, but there's so much more I don't share.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff that's their story, really. I mean, I can't share any of the stuff my kids go through or what that then does to me. It's like totally off limits.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the person. Like my husband now doesn't care. He's like, write about whatever you want, but it depends on the person in your life. But
Yeah. And I think, you know, where the sensitivities are. You know, when I had lunch with a friend yesterday that I mentioned something about one of my children. She said, "Oh, you didn't put that in the book." And I said, I wouldn't put that in the book.
right.
So I don't think that I would ever write about something that was a point of real hurt or weakness for a member of my family. That would be terrible. I mean,
That's a good answer.
yeah.
It is a fine line, though. It is a fine line. And someone actually after this talked about social media. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think it's a silly distinction? I know Zibby uses it a lot. Do you, Kristin, do you use it a lot in your work, or?
I'm on Instagram a lot, and I don't really post my kids on Instagram. Occasionally I do. Like when I was at Real Simple on social media, I would never ever name my kids or post their pictures. Now that my two older sons are in their 20s and they're also on social media, those rules have relaxed a little bit, but the youngest guy is never on my Instagram. I feel like it's not until he's sort of fully himself on social media. That's kind of his job, sort of like what Zibby was saying.
That's a complicated one. Someone asked, what's, for you, Kristin, what's the hardest thing to approach with humor? And, you know, you are really, really funny in this book. Like you could do stand-up. I mean, you're really, really funny. Even the hard stuff, you just make light. And I don't know, what's your secret to that? How do you approach everything? I mean, you're so humble and so relatable, but how do you make everything so funny? And do you think you're a funny person?
Other people tell me I'm a funny person.
Uh-huh.
Which makes me begin to believe it. I think I'm somewhat funny. I think I'm funnier probably on the page than I am, you know, in real life. Probably the hardest thing to write about with humor. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm not. Rewind that, because I don't have an answer to that question. What I was going to say was, and I do include this, I guess, at the end of the book in this one of the more sort of serious little teeny chapters. But well, I had this writing professor in college who said that everything sad is a little bit funny and everything funny is a little bit sad. And I think kind of on the whole, my book sort of captures that. You know, the chapter about the death of my friend is not funny at all. There are moments in the chapter about the death of the dog Rebel that are a little bit funny because there were funny things. You know, when I had the fork adventure, right after that happened and I was recovering from the surgery and I was out of the hospital, someone said to me, "Oh, you should write about that." And I was thinking, I'm never writing about that. That was horrible. But then over time, I found it started to look kind of funny. It was a bizarre thing that happened to me. And I think if I didn't make it funny, it would be a boring story. It would be a boring medical story. So I don't know. I don't know if that's an answer, Patty.
I think that's a great answer. And I can't let you go, either one of you, without at least telling our audience tonight what you're reading, what you recommend. I always like to know personally about any debut author that you are reading. I mean, that's how we came to you, Kristin, is because Zibby said, you got to read this book and pre-order it here. So please, it's a time to sort of give a plug to any authors you're following, any new books coming out. I'll start with you, Kristin.
So I'm reading Clara and the Sun, like every other person in the world, and I love it, but I'm only on page 73. I read Hamnet. The best novel I've read recently is Hamnet, which I realize is not new, but it was just astonishing. I thought it was so amazing. And then I would say the best nonfiction book I've read recently is this book called American Baby by Gabrielle Glaser, which is about adoption in America. in the last century and how sort of horrible and corrupt, but it follows the story of one family too. So it's really well reported, but it reads like a novel. Those are sort of my recent ones.
Those are great. And just so the audience knows, we're putting them in the chat function, so feel free to click. How about you, Zibby, the bookfluencer? What's on your
Oh boy, the pressure. Well, I'm only
I know,
gonna,
that's a lot of pressure for her.
I mean, I don't know. I've been doing 7 episodes a week. So I'm just going to talk about my recent ones because I'm interviewing Gabrielle Garcia tomorrow. And I have to finish this book. I still have 30 pages, but it's so good. I don't know if you've read Of Women and Salt.
I've read about it though.
Beautiful. And it's only 200 pages, which is really nice. And it's like kind of smaller, which is also nice. So it doesn't feel so intimidating. And she's a gorgeous writer, and it's about immigration, but it's about mothers and daughters, and it's about Cuba, and like it's so good. Like, I've been reading it on the elliptical machine and getting a much longer workout than I had planned, because I'm like, well, if I do 10 more minutes, I can read a little more. So this is really good. I am reading Notes from a Young Black Chef, which I keep hearing like amazing things about. So I'm really excited about that. These are just the 3 on my desk. So anyway, I'm also interviewing Brooke Baldwin tomorrow about Huddle, how women unlock their collective power, because I like this idea of women sort of lifting each other up. So those are my 3 this week on my desk. But I could show you over here, and it could give you another 100 suggestions.
There was actually, I don't mean to backtrack here, but this was another interesting question just came in for you, Kristin. After transitioning from heavy corporate role to something a bit more free, and would you go back to a corporate job? I mean, it's hard. That's a question for everybody during COVID, but do you have more flexibility where you are now? And do you miss the corporate world?
There are things I miss about the corporate world. I kind of miss like, okay, so can I just say something? I miss like really, I miss fancy marble lobbies of big New York City buildings. And I miss sort of like really sleek, big, fancy offices. And so surfaced. There was a time after I left my job where I was doing this nonprofit, taking this nonprofit leadership class, and I went to meet this guy at the Ritz-Carlton in White Plains in Westchester County, where I live. And I met him for lunch, and I walked into the Ritz-Carlton and I was like, oh, it's that hotel smell. Like I forgot about this smell. And it was so like little things like that, which are totally superficial. But I do miss working on like a big team. You know, like when you work as an agent, you're really independent. And I love my colleagues at Inkwell, and they're really helpful. And Inkwell is more teamy than a lot of agencies. But it's a different kind of a team situation. So sorry, that's a long question. There are things I miss, but I don't miss a ton of things.
Yeah. Well, I think we all miss a hotel smell right now.
Oh, I know, right?
Yeah.
It's a unique smell too.
Anyway, I do think, Kristin, your book is incredibly timely. It lifted my spirits. I just think, I don't know, I think we all are more the same than different. And
Me
it was
too.
that you shared that. And I just think it's terrific. So keep on writing.
Okay.
Don't stop. Keep on being funny. And I appreciate you both. Make sure you buy both Zibby's new book and Kristin's book and her backlist. And visit us at RJ's or Bookhampton, wherever. We're all open. And thank you so much. Keep an eye out for more events. We're doing a ton. We don't rival Zibby, but we're doing a lot of events. Thanks for coming, everybody. Thank you, Kristin.
Thank you, everyone. And thanks so much, Patty, for having us. And thank you, thanks, Zibby, for making the time. And it's always nice to see you.
You too.